I'd like to introduce two towering leaders who are going to have a fireside chat on this pressing question as to why productivity and attrition, low attrition, have become a norm for most of the companies. Our chief guest today, Mr. Sanjiv Mehta, is the executive chairman of L Carteten India, prior to which he spent 32 years at Unilever. And in that 32 years, he was the chairman and CEO of HUL for a decade. He led the company to a 5-fold increase in market cap. Former president of FICCI, he co-authored India at 100 and is a strong advocate of purpose-driven business, climate action, and inclusion. May I please invite Mr. Sanjiv Mehta, sir, to come onto the stage, please. A big round of applause. Our guest of honor today, Mr. Sandip Ghose, is the founder director of NISM, where he also set up the National Center for Financial Education to drive financial literacy across India. A career central banker, he served as the head of HR at RBI and the chief of staff to 3 governors. He has led premier training institutes like CAFRAL, the College of Agriculture Banking, and shaped leaders of India's banking sector. He continues to serve on the board of leading business schools and companies. May I please request Mr. Sandip Ghose, sir, to come onto the stage, please. This session will be moderated by Mr. Sreenivas Nagappa, an FMCG expert with over 40 years of experience in general management, executive coaching, and strategic consulting. He spent 22 years with Unilever across India, Bangladesh, and China, and has served as a CEO, country manager, and board member in both B2C and B2B sectors. An ICF certified executive coach and an IIM Ahmedabad alumnus, he specializes in coaching senior leaders, building alliances, and driving business transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Sreenivas Nagappa onto the stage. So the first session is going to be a fireside chat between Sanjiv Mehta sir and Sandip Ghose sir, moderated by Sreenivas Nagappa sir. And the question that we want to address today is why has productivity and attrition, high attrition and low productivity become a norm for most of the companies?
So good evening to all of you, and particularly to you both, Sanjiv and Sandip. We're very happy that so many of us could make the time today, despite it being a working day. And as Murli kept telling me, he was hoping that the rain would stay away, and I think your prayers have finally worked. You've obviously heard a lot about what both these distinguished gentlemen do, and maybe I'll just take half a minute and ask each of them, what's currently occupying you? We know a lot about what all you have done over your distinguished careers. What's currently occupying you? Maybe take a minute and just let everybody know, please.
Thanks, Srini. Yeah, Srini has been my colleague, and I now know him for many years. We worked together in Bangladesh. I am now into private equity. So L Carteten is the largest investment vehicle in the world focused on consumers. And in India, we have a joint venture between me and L Carteten. And I also chair the Asia Fund. Earlier, I used to help create value for one big company. Now one helps create value for many of our investee companies.
Excellent. Very nice to hear that. Sandeep ji?
So I currently engage with business schools across the globe, mainly UK and India, and try to interact with students mainly with the broader aspects of career counseling and guidance as to how they should treat their first job as a career rather than a job. And on my own, I and my wife, we run a school known as the Career School for Parents. And this is only by referral. There's no advertisement. If somebody knows us, they will send you to us. Mainly because today education has become very expensive. The parents should be aware where they are investing in their child's future. So it is with that, both of us actually started the concept of career counseling in India in the late 70s. And today we run the Career School for Parents. It's a very fulfilling, I would say it's a very fulfilling engagement where you meet young parents with their budding kids, 18 years old, and wanting to stride the world.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I just thought we would start this conversation with the end in mind. I think the problem has been well articulated. Frontline attrition and lack of productivity is something that is certainly a serious concern for all of us. But I thought we would start with saying and asking these two gentlemen, what good practice, what best practice have you seen in part or in entirety, which actually addresses this problem? They've, of course, been with multiple organizations and have exposure across financial services, FMCG, etc., pharma, etc., etc. So I think it would be a good thing to start by saying, what are the good practices we've seen? And then maybe take the conversation forward into saying, therefore, if we had to bring some of those practices into our organizations, what are the enabling conditions we need to create? So may I request either of you to kick off and talk a little bit about what best practice you've seen. And
thanks, Srini. Let me give you a couple of stories. First one I'll tell you from my days in Bangladesh. This goes back to 2001, 2002, when I had just taken over as the chairman of the company over there. And we had a very militant trade union, extremely militant. I remember just a few days before I had come into Bangladesh, they had stripped naked the personal manager in the factory and had locked him up for over 18 hours in a room till the police had to come and rescue. That was the level of militancy. And it was, the productivity, of course, was very low. There was double manning. You couldn't sack a guy because they would go on strike. And they had massive political backing. Now, Bangladesh, like India, is a very hierarchical society. And there was a very clear gap between the management and the blue-collared workers. And we thought, taking them head on would not serve the purpose, but it will only compound the problem. Normally what happens in most organizations when it comes to either the people at the blue-collar stage or in the front line, you assume that they are human beings with hand and legs. So we said, let's treat them not just as people with hands and legs, but also people with head and heart. And rather than confronting them, we said, let us make them partners to progress. So we started reaching out to them, and soon it developed whereby every quarter I would go to our main factory in Chittagong, sit with the union, and share with them the strategy of the company. Initially, it was the broad outlines. Then increasingly, we got deeper into talking to them about competitive threats, talking to them about new brand launches, talking to them about what are the challenges facing the company. And slowly but steadily, we started seeing a very different response. The discussions from canteen food and over time, but they wanted it to be mandatory earnings for everyone, the discussion moved on a different level altogether. Then we introduced TPM in the factory, which was total productive maintenance. One of the core things about TPM was investing in the training and development of people. And the people soon realized that they had an enlightened self-interest in companies' development and growth. If the company grew, they will have better remuneration, the company will expand, there will be a better chance of more employees coming into the company. And they started responding unlike what they used to do in the past. And in a couple of years' time, all about being a militant trade union became history of sorts. It became a company where the union and the workers became an integral part of company's growth journey. We brought in new management practices, linked their wages to productivity, helped discover the hidden factories in the company. Hidden factories implies where your capacity utilization is so low, you can de-bottleneck it and create more capacities without putting in more capital investment. And the results were remarkable. So trust begets trust. If you start with the premise that they are our people and we are vested in them. And there is an unwritten covenant that I will look after you and you will look after my business, then the magic happens.
No, so before we got into this formal setup, I was telling Sanjiv that we work for two organizations which don't fit into today's subject. Attrition and RBI don't go together. We have 1% attrition, and that also at the middle management level. In fact, when I used to head the HR in RBI, we formally took out a circular because most financial organizations are pyramidal in shape, where bulk of the people are at the bottom of the pyramid, and then it continues to become steeper and steeper. So at some junction, promotions do become difficult. And we would give full opportunity to our employees to seek any help from headhunters in the market, the best headhunters in the market, to get placed anywhere they wanted to go. Nobody left. Then we started a system that we will allow you to go and work for any organization for 3 to 5 years. And whatever is the difference, if you get the same salary, it is perfectly fine. But if there is a differential salary, then RBI will meet that differential. Some people went, but when we looked at it closely, they actually moved because they wanted to move closer to the house rather than be attached to that company or to an in fact, you could join an NGO also. So sometimes the underlying, what Sanjiv mentioned, is if you treat your people like your people and provide a fair opportunity of growth, I think that is all what people require. One thing which, of course, I have been closely associated with the financial sector, and especially when I joined NISM and started working in the capital market space, I found that things are much more difficult than the banking sector. Over here, people at the bottom of the pyramid is virtually 90%. And there is no structured career path for anybody working at that level. Attrition is very, very high. Very high. Even in the banking sector. Take, for example, State Bank of India. Attrition is 3% today. And that also mainly focused in the middle management. Whereas SDFC, which is of the same size, around 2 lakh plus employees, attrition is close to 30% at the front line. Both big organizations, both good organizations. But in State Bank of India, a probationary officer can see the chairman who also used to be a probationary officer. That you cannot see in SDFC. So that is a very big difference. That you know that there is a career path for a person, that if I have joined at this level, there is a possibility that if I give my best, I may go up to that position. So I fully agree with Sanjiv that if you take care of your people, if you're learning, if that whole concept of skilling, reskilling and upskilling is on a roller coaster, you have no problem. But unfortunately for both our organizations, HUL and RBI, we have not been able to instill the same thing. In fact, a couple of days ago, Mr. Muralidharan wrote a piece in the Telangana Times where he has quoted that why RBI cannot get into this space. So RBI today has made a statement, and he had used that statement, that possibly attrition is no more an HR issue. It is a strategic imperative. It is a necessity. Either you look at it or institutions will not be able to survive over a period of time. So that has triggered some board level discussions. I've been on a number of financial sector companies' board. I don't feel the frontline is discussed. I've heard the name foot soldiers, and they remain to be foot soldiers.
Absolutely. I think that brings us to a very interesting point that, and I was talking to a couple of people prior to this, I think most organizations see frontline, unfortunately, as a necessary evil. Almost that you need to have them, otherwise how do you get the top line, etc., etc. But you know, if we didn't have them, that would be even better. Yeah? And I think if you pick up the points that are talked about, enlightened self-interest, there was all this beautiful story about creating trust and a line of sight in terms of the career, so the career growth. It brings us back to the basic question, which I think are two. One, why is the C-suite not bothered about frontline productivity and frontline attrition? Why has it become a BAU? That's the basic first question to look at. And secondly, how or why should they think differently? What sort of enabling conditions do we need for the C-suite to start looking at this as a real issue?
Let me give a story from my days when I was heading HUL. When it came to our own salespeople, our rate of attrition was very low. But we have a system whereby we sell the goods to the distributor, and the distributor in turn sells it to the millions of outlets that HUL's products are available at. And we have 3,000 distributors, and there are about 35,000 salespeople and about 20,000 merchandisers. The distributor salesmen are legally and otherwise the responsibility of the distributor, because the company pays remuneration to the distributor, and it is based on a system of ROI, and the distributor in turn gives the salaries to the people whom they employ. In paper, that's how it is. But remember that when the distributor salesman goes into a store, he is representing brand HUL. He may not be on the payroll of HUL, but he is representing the brand HUL. Every day, the shopkeeper looks at that salesman as representing Unilever. Now, there was a period of time when the platforms came into India, the e-commerce ones, the Amazons, the Flipkart. And for them, the easiest way to recruit was go and pick up the distributor salesmen of companies like HUL, because they were highly trained. And suddenly our attrition rate at the front end skyrocketed. Yeah, it went up to 15-20%. Now, why this attrition rate is very bad? Because the salesman builds relationship with the trade. And even if we were paying well, to recruit a new person, to train a person, build relationship would take a few months. And during that period, in that territory, invariably, you would end up losing growth. It became a serious issue. So we did some defining changes in the way we looked at the whole system. The first, we said, the responsibility, or if I may call it, moral ownership of the field force has to be with the company and not with the distributors. That was the big shift we did. So we told the head of HR, from now onwards, that ownership rests with us. So you're not responsible just for the people who work as salespeople within HUL, but you are responsible for the entire ecosystem. The second thing we did was, we looked at the records. We did some forensic checks. What the distributor used to tell us, that the salary they are paying to the salesman, not everywhere they would end up paying the same salary. They would be paying 20-25% less to the salesman than what they would show in their ROI calculation. So we said we have to stop this, and the best way would be direct transfer of money. So we set up a system whereby the salary and the incentives to the salesman would go directly. We had another, for legal purposes, another company which would do that, but it won't be routed through the distributor. It would get deducted from the distributor's commission. The third important thing we did was, we said HUL sales force. Every year we were expanding, we were recruiting in our own company. I mean, someone who is employed within the company. And we said, every year amongst the new recruits, about 15% of the new recruits we would recruit from the pool of the distributor's salesmen. They may not meet the benchmark of education that we would normally have for people who we would recruit directly in the company. But we said not to worry. Those guys are trained. And we will provide them the skills and upgrade their skills. But just think of, for a distributor's salesman, working in Eastern UP, working in Bihar, working in Orissa. He today saw there was an opportunity to become an employee of HUL. Just think of it, what a change it did to the morale of the people. Even if you have, say, 1 in 10 odd of getting into HUL, that was a big enough motivator to say, hey man, let me stay around and have a shot at it. And then we said, we have to completely change the way we are going to help them do their job. One was we started with training them with bite-sized videos. The other was, during the same period, we were working on reimagining HUL using data and technology, which was a huge initiative. That was a time when the cost of data in the country had plummeted by 1/20th of what it was before Jio entered. And that resulted in creation of an app called Shikhar app, whereby a retailer can place an order and we can customize an assortment for each store depending on the kind of shoppers that live in the neighborhood. That would mean that the job of the salesman becomes very easy compared to what it used to be in the past. Because here was a aid for the retailer to place an order. But we were training them, and we also realized that despite bringing in technology, we cannot dispense with the distributor salespeople. Because the last 3-4 lines of SKU that sell in an outlet would not be driven by an app, it would be driven by relationship, and it would be driven by the persuasive skills of the salesman. So think of the scenario from an era when the salesman at the distributor's end was left to the whims and fancies of the distributor, to now you have a salesman whose salary comes directly, who has been trained, who has a big tech aid in terms of the Shikhar app. So his remuneration goes up because his growth is much better. And today he's valued much more because he has a chance to get into working for HUL directly. So not only it resulted in a significant drop in the attrition rate, but it had a huge impact on the growth rate of the company. So it's very important for us to own the entire value chain and ensure that our people get fair remuneration. I think for the companies, when you look at your ecosystem, you have to move away from minimum wages to living wages. And I would not prescribe it as mandatory, but I would certainly say that those companies which are earning very well, which are creating huge shareholder value, should ask themselves, why should we not move from minimum wages to living wages? And create an environment where your salespeople or the front-end people, even if they are not directly employed, have an emotional attachment to the company. That makes a world of difference.
Sandip, if you pick up the thoughts that Sanjiv just talked about and applied back to the financial services industry, which you're very familiar with, how does that resonate?
So, Sreenivas, in the financial sector, we have the largest number as frontline workers, largest number. No other sector matches this. In fact, bulk of the technology sector is also managing their financial portals only. It's not that they are engaged in anything else. And some of the things which are very stark, although they remain to be the first connect with the client for services and sales, salaries remain to be very, very low. I don't feel it also meets the minimum. And where they are able to succeed, I would say, is there's ample supply. Ample supply. Today, India has 12,000 engineering colleges and 7,000 management schools. You throw a stone in a crowded place, you are bound to hit an MBA or an engineer. It is quite surprising that even in an assistant's job in the Reserve Bank of India, where we clearly say that you just need to be a first-class graduate, anybody who finally makes it is an engineer MBA. So the supply is so much that possibly one of the reasons that it has not reached or not become a concern at the board level. And currently there is no measure of productivity loss at that stage, because the financial sector, you would be surprised, is actually suffering 120% attrition. You are recruiting 2 to 3 times in a year, 120% attrition, and it is surviving. So in a limit, but on the other hand, I would also say recruitment level are random, and the people whom we pick are unskilled. Hence, the pain of not paying them is not very severe. So in my previous organization, the National Institute of Securities Markets, although this was not one of the mandates of that institute, but because I have a passion for career counseling and guidance, I discussed with a couple of major banks, one of the HR heads is sitting here, who was kind enough to work with us at that point of time. And we said, we will supply you skilled manpower. You just give assurance that you will take them, provided they pass your minimum requirements. And we started doing that. We did a 6-month intensive program of certification, training, and the biggest training was in the area of soft skill, because I sincerely believe that if you cannot read, write, speak, and listen, you are not qualified. If these skills are not at the level of excellence, you are not qualified to hold any job. Today, bulk of the communication problem in bigger organization is this asymmetry of information. There's no connect with the bottom and the top. Comprehensive asymmetry of information. So we worked with these big organizations, and they would tell us that this year we are recruiting 500 people, this year we are recruiting 600 people. And we'll say, okay, we'll train these 600 people, we'll give them intensive training. These 600 people would pay for their training and would be placed in jobs where the cost of training would be just 50% of their emoluments which they would get. And the only condition which was attached to these institutions is that you will only be able to pick them up provided you are able to give them at least 3-stage movement in their career. So it worked, and I'm happy to say that the organizations were more than happy that from day one, because 5 days these boys and girls will work with us, and Saturday, Sunday they will work with the functional heads of these organizations who will come and talk to them about the culture of those organizations and the requirements which the organization had. I still feel that one space, although we keep on blaming the corporates and all, I don't feel it is the job of a business school that at the age of 24 or 25, you have to teach somebody to speak and listen and talk. Unfortunately, that is how it is. I work with a lot of IIMs today, and I can assure you that if we remove the concept of placement, nobody would be going today to these colleges. We are the only country in the world where we have a concept of campus placement. There's no other country in the world which gives you campus placement. All the universities, all the international schools with which I have associated, they have a huge career development cell, huge. And these career development cells have the information of all the organizations, their employment, their everything associated to one's career, where you can go and spend time like you spend time in the library. And from there you develop connects, and so you allow a person to grow. In this fast age of technology change, I think one person whom we have lost out, and that is the only space which you can innovate, is you. You have to innovate. There's nobody else who can take care of you unless you are ready to take care of yourself. Once you are ready to take care of yourself, I'm sure the organizations come up with the biggest support which is possible. So I think these gaps are very difficult to appreciate and understand. But since career counseling remains to be my passion in the last 45 years, and I guide students, both MBA, engineering, and mentor the middle management on career guidance, I see this gap continues to be there. Even today, anybody, any parent who comes, before even we are able to talk to the child, इसको सर इंजीनियर बनाना है, इसको सर डॉक्टर बनाना है, क्लास 12th का मार्क्स 45% है, इंजीनियर बनाना है, And we tell them कि भाई देखिए थोड़ा मेहनत करेगा तो बैंक में clerical job मिल जाएगी. उसके बाद he can work up. There's no problem. But there is this, I would say that if the supply chain was cut, one of the good things of Indian education, at least till graduation, you need not spend money. My son passed out of the best college in Bombay. He did a BA political science. But we didn't even spend $100 in the whole year for his tuition fee. Best college in Bombay. So there is a huge amount of access to education and higher education in India, which is now, of course, becoming slowly difficult. But there is a huge access, and that is why this supply chain is huge.
Very interesting point on the supply chain and the abundance of supply. If you look at it from a different angle, and as I think both of them touched upon, productivity doesn't figure anywhere in the P&L. It doesn't figure anywhere as a line item in the balance sheet. It doesn't sit anywhere on your cash flow statement, right? But it's influencing every line out there. And in fact, even something like 10, 12 years back, there was an article in the HBR which said all this labor arbitrage of cheaper salaries and cheaper wages in India is a little bit of an eyewash because the productivity that's attached to some of this very low wage labor is extremely low. And if you look at it in real costs, probably the gap is far shorter. So I think it's probably worthwhile for all of us to take away the fact that there can be significant productivity improvements, coming back to the whole point about trust, about career growth, about planning careers, about giving them a line of sight. We are a little behind our schedule, so I'd look to bring this to a close. Could I request the two of you gentlemen, what thoughts do you have to the leaders around here? What can they go away and think of and implement, not next year, not after the next presidential election, but tomorrow morning? What do you suggest that this group of leaders actions tomorrow morning?
I'll tell you another story. During my 10 years in HUL, we took the business from 25,000 crore to nearly 60,000 crores. We improved the operating margin or EBITDA from 13% to nearly 24%. We had a return of capital employed on tangible assets of 3 digits. 3 digits. So whatever capital is invested, you'd get the same return every year. And the market cap went up from $12 billion to $76 billion. Now, in the Unilever world, we became the lowest cost business. And if, as a nation, we have to win globally, we have to be cost competitive, we have to have superior quality, we have to have excellent customer service, and we have to innovate to lead. So cost, quality, service, and innovation are paramount. Now, HUL is also known as a company where perhaps there are the maximum number of crorepati earners. People who have 8-digit salary. On the other hand, we have the lowest cost in the industry and in the Unilever world, including China. So we can do it. We can be competing with China too. I had a very simple philosophy. The philosophy was 6, 8, 10. Employ 6, give them the salary of 8, and get the work of 10. That's what we need to do as a nation, and not the reverse. Employ 10, give them the salary of 8 and get the work of 6, which is the condition today in many parts of the country.
No, to my colleagues here who are, I can see many of them, I've worked with them. I can only suggest that have a relook at the salary structure at the base. Banking and financial sector in India is globally the best. You don't have a payment system stable, swift, and secure like the Indian payment system. NEFT and RTGS, which we do left, right, and center any time of the day, is not available globally to the most developed countries in the world. Similarly, this T+1 settlement, and now it's going to become T0, is not there anywhere in the globe. We talk about one bank failing. If you look at the US or the European model, at least 40 to 50 banks fail every year. Nobody talks about it because banking is a risky business. And that is what is ingrained in the mind of the people, that if I am banking, it is a risky business. In our case, it is not like that. Why do we have so much paraphernalia of regulation? Because there is some mantra that you are handling others' money. And if you are handling others' money, you have to take care of it. To my friends, I can just say, do have a structure where you can have a relook at their salary, cut down their targets, which are very, very difficult to meet. You have the banking target, but not the target of selling financial products, of mutual fund, credit cards, and insurance. Don't have a target there. Give them some comfort. And there needs to be a proper line of communication. I can assure you today, there are good branch managers who are handling a huge number of relationship officers or managers who are doing excellent work because that branch manager is good. But there is a branch manager who is like the overseer of the 50s, who treats these guys really like foot soldiers. And they leave the bank not because the salary is bad, not because the bank is bad, but because that guy is bad. Just have a look. I would say that, and I've forgotten that mantra, but I used to seriously believe, recruit for attitude and train for skill. This is the mantra with which I have always worked. But somehow it's not working today. So find a mantra which works so that these people, the gap of communication from the top to bottom is reduced.
I'll just add to the mantra of Mr. Ghosh. Train the people so well that they get many jobs, but treat them so well that they don't accept any other job.
Absolutely. On that lovely note, thank you very much to both of you, and thank you all for being such good listeners. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sanjiv Mehta sir, Sandip Ghose sir, and Sreenivas Nagappa sir for this wonderful conversation. I think incentivization, compensation, target setting, productivity, attrition, all the facets of frontline was touched in that discussion.